What is going on, my Jets family out there? I appreciate you guys, like always, tuning in to the Take Flight Spit and Fire podcast. You got me, you know who I am, Harrison Glazer, but I have a special guest for you guys tonight. And he's not just a regular guest. This guy's awesome. This guy's big on YouTube. You guys have seen him on Jets Talk with Ryan and Green Bean. He's the man, and I'm excited to have him here, excited to be talking to him. So what's going on, Matt?
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Harrison, for having me on. I'm excited to just talk football and hang out a little bit.
Yeah, that's what it's about. I mean, it's the experience. Like in the same reason you go to games and stuff. Like,
oh yeah, without a doubt, it's the same thing. It's just like virtual almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which nowadays that's like meeting people. Like when I meet people virtual, like especially because I'm like a teacher, like I'm like, that's like nice to meet you. And you think about it, but like that's how you meet people nowadays. Like,
yeah, no, without a doubt. So Zoom has become the new norm. So this is nothing out of the ordinary for us here.
Yeah, especially with like, the Jets, they have their meetings on Zoom and
that's right. Yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah, man. But like I said, it's exciting to have you here. I appreciate you joining us. If you want to, maybe tell the people a little bit about like yourself, because we all have like our story. Like for me, it dates back like it's in my blood. But I love, the people to tell them, what brought you to the Jets and like your Jets origin story.
Yeah, so I was really big into the Jets. Probably, I think the year was 2003. So me and my dad got me into it. I feel like that's the case for a lot of people. Their dad kind of showed them the way. And, growing up from a very young age, I played baseball. So like I'm a Mets fan too. So they were like my first love, but I didn't play football growing up. So I didn't have that attachment right away. So I was a little bit older. I was 8 years old. And I remember it was Jets Dolphins on a Sunday. And I went to work with my dad in the morning. And then we were just talking about, I think we were talking about like tailgating and stuff like that. And I never went to a game before at that point. And he said something like, he's like, you know what? Let's do like a tailgate style of spread. And when we get home and we'll watch the Jet game and eat. Like that's a fun thing that a lot of people do. I was like, okay, sure. That sounds good to me. And I loved it. And now every Sunday since then, since I've been 8 years old, we do that every single week. Like, I'm not the kind of person who could like go out to a bar and watch with friends. Like, no, like I got to be in my spot. I got to be at home, like on my couch with my food. The bathroom's 2 steps away. Like, that's perfect for me. That's my heaven. So really from a young age in the early 2000s, I think it was 2003, Ricky Williams ran for a bunch of yards against the Jets. That's all I remember.
That's awesome, man. And like, I can totally relate with you. Like, I get that. Like, my dad took me to my first game when I was like 7, and you remember a lot more than me. Like, I just remember they played the Dolphins.
Okay.
I don't remember. I was too young. I don't remember. But what I do remember was at the end of the game, the Jets won. And my dad turned to me and he was like, they won because of you. And, as like a 7-year-old, like I believed it. Like, I was totally like, oh my God, they won because of me. And that was just like, that was my moment. And I got into it then. And my grandfather was a big Jets fan, and he's not with us anymore, but he loved it. Like, he was watching every Sunday, like watch college with me, like going to games with my dad, going to games with my grandpa. Like, I don't know where you guys were, sitting, but if, depending if, we're parking out in the boonies, I remember going through the tunnel. I was making the sheep sounds, the moo or the bow, right. All that fun stuff. But yeah, but just, it's the memories. Like you said, like memories with your family. Like that's what it's all about. Like I remember like people ask me all the time, like, I can't remember maybe that specific game, every play, but I remember I went with my dad. I remember we had a great time. Like I remember I went with my grandpa. Like it's the memories, man. Like that's what like bonds Jet fans like eternal.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like that emotional connection that you feel almost like you said. I don't remember much from the game. All I remember is the Ricky Williams going off, but it was just like, wow, like this is really cool. It's like a culture kind of a thing. And that's how I feel with Jets fans. Like it's kind of like one big family and it's like this one culture and all of us coming together and stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, it seems like that. You see it on Twitter all the time. Like, Jet fans go at it about who's going to be the quarterback or what we're going to do here. But like when somebody outside the Jets like talks crap, it's like everyone all together. It's like, remember the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies when like he's hanging off the bridge and he's like barely about to make it. And the guy starts throwing stuff at him and he's like, hey, in New York, when you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. And like, that's like always what I think about, like that memory. Like, it's amazing. Like, that memory in that movie stuck with me. And, like, that's what I think about with Jet fans.
Without a doubt. And if someone comes after us, like the whole Mark Schlereth thing a few weeks ago with Jets fans, like that now all Jets fans are like, okay, this guy's our enemy. And, like, that's just how it is. We all gain up on him now.
Yeah, and that was, I don't know if you remember, I had a lot of fun in that situation
Oh yeah.
because it was just interesting. And again, it made no sense, like somebody that level doing something that immature. So it just made me kind of want to, like he said, you want to poke the bear. Okay, let's poke the bear intelligently and see what happens.
Absolutely. I was in
Is
the
how
same
I
boat.
looked at it.
Right.
But yeah, man. So, minicamp has just started up recently, and there hasn't been that much developments. But one big development is Zach Wilson might be wearing number 2. And I know people are like freaking out about it, like, oh my God, it's number 2. But to me, like, he didn't wear number 1 even all through college. Like, he wore number 11. Like, I'm totally fine with number 2. I don't know how you feel on the situation. Like, I think of number 2, I think of Derek Jeter. Like, I have no problem with number 2.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like the most aesthetically pleasing number for me. I don't know. I'm
That's
not gonna
fair. No, that's fair.
make a huge deal over it. Like I'm not gonna cry because I have to get a number 2 Zach Wilson jersey or whatever. It's single digits. I like single digit numbers. 1 and 2 just like screams kicker number to me. So I was hoping he was gonna go with I like 5's a clean number. I think he wore 11 in college his freshman year. So
Yeah, he
something
did.
like that, and then have Mims wore 5 in college, so maybe have Mims switch back to 5 or something. But 2 will grow on me. It's not something I'm going to lose sleep over.
And that's an interesting situation, the way they've changed the numbers up. Like, I actually brought it up. It's hard to keep track of. For anyone who out there maybe hasn't heard it 100%. I just brought it up to tell you guys quick. So, running backs, tight ends, fullbacks, halfbacks, wide receivers, they can now wear 1 through 50. So any of the low numbers, and the same ones they wore before, 80 to 89. DBs can wear 1 through 50. So any of those numbers. Linebackers, 1 through 59, 90 through 99. Offensive linemen, it's pretty much the same. They haven't changed. Same with defensive linemen, pretty much. And QBs and kickers kind of remain the same. But it's interesting because you can see, different players. Yeah, Mims could go back to number 5, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know. That's going to be weird to me, but like that's how I feel about the 17th game too. Like I don't like change, so that's probably part of the reason why I'm apprehensive about it. But I don't know, something about like the positional groups having like their 10 number range or whatever it is, depending on the position of what numbers they can wear. I don't know. There's something cool about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's like college. Like for example, I was thinking I think I was right. I want to make sure because I don't want to misspeak. But Jamie and Sherwood wore a low number. Yeah, linebackers can now choose 1 through 59. I think he wore number. I feel like I'm going to bring it up right now just to make sure. I thought he wore like number 9. I was thinking he would wear that again. He wore number 21.
Okay.
So he could potentially wear 21 again, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's a 21 on the roster. Not that's jumping off to me right now, anyway.
Yeah, when I think of 21, I think of Morris Claiborne, and that didn't work out.
No, not the best.
Yeah, exactly. So that number's open. Yeah, it's interesting. Mims could go back to 5 if he chooses. I don't know if he will because fans depends. People get the jersey. People tend to get pissed. Oh, you change your number, got to get new jerseys.
But, yeah. Sometimes I like when the teams do where like you can trade in your jersey if like a player changes a number and they'll give you the new one. I've seen teams do that before. I think that's cool.
That would be pretty awesome. That would definitely let players choose then because a lot of people could be doing that potentially. So many players with that new number change. Like a lot of guys could potentially be like, oh, I want to go back to this number for some reason or something because now I can.
Right, like Reggie Bush, he wore 5 at USC, and he was trying to push for that, but he had to wear 25 his NFL career. If he was in now, I'd assume he'd want to go back to number 5. So yeah, but like that's the thing. If these guys, I feel bad if you spend a lot of money on a jersey and then the next year they switch their number, kind of sucks.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. So the biggest news, which I'd love to get your opinion on, the best thing, Joe Douglas's last draft, just. In my opinion, the magnificence of Joe Douglas's last draft. I don't know if you want to maybe how you feel about certain players or people you wanted, or what players you're maybe most excited about potentially.
Yeah, I think it was a really good draft class from Joe Douglas. I think it was interesting to see him go so offensive heavy early on. That's not what we're used to, but I think it was something that's necessary because of how bad the offense has been for a long time. I think Elijah Vera Tucker was my favorite pick. They got aggressive to move up and go grab him, but I think this is a guy who you could put next to Mekhi Becton and then like forget about for 10 plus years. He's 22 or going to turn 22 soon. Becton's 22, and like that whole side of the line for a rookie quarterback protecting their blind side is going to be super important. And I just looked at that, outside of quarterback, obviously, that was probably the team's biggest need. And to see them be aggressive and go up and get the clear and away best one in the class, I loved it. I think that was his shining moment of the draft.
Without a doubt, man, I totally agree. And it's funny how you'll say, it's funny, I have a follow-up question based on that, too, because I had a feeling you were going to either pick Zach Wilson or AVT, because why wouldn't you? I mean, I loved Zach. Zach was my guy for a long time. I was excited about him. But AVT, like you mentioned, Vera Tucker had a pass blocking grade last season of 92.8. Back in 2019, he was the #1 rated pass and running blocking guy in the entire Pac-12. Probably top-ish to the whole college football, I would imagine. Like people, were like, oh, you had to trade up to get AVT, but they're looking at it wrong. Like eventually the dialogue is going to be, wait a minute, that's all you gave up? Like you only gave up that many picks to get a guy like AVT, because the potential, like Douglas knew what he was doing. Like people are like, he's crazy. He's not crazy. He knows what he's doing. He's getting the best guard in the draft. Like the way I compared it to some people was, like even though he went in the top 15, which is what I thought he would. That's why we traded up to that point. Douglas said he was top 10. You got to compare him to like when the Colts took Quentin Nelson, to like when Washington took Brandon Scherf, like elite guard levels. Like I love that pick too, man. I'm with you. But I had a feeling, I don't blame you. I'm the same way. Everyone would pick those two guys, Wilson or AVT. So my follow-up question was, other than Wilson and AVT, who would you say is your favorite potentially? Who do you like the most in the draft other than those two guys?
Oh, I'm going to go with one of the later round guys. I'm going to go with Nasruddin. I think he has a really high ceiling in the 6th round. And I think the injury is why he was pushed down as far as what he was. But for me, I think he has a legitimate chance to be a starting will linebacker for this team. I know they addressed that a little bit earlier in the draft too. But I think with his athletic profile, I think that could translate to the next level. And, he played at FSU in some quality competition there. I think was a steal in the 6th round. I thought he'd go, maybe 3 rounds earlier than that even.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. Like that's what everyone thought. Like I was shocked. Like the projection before, the draft started, Nasruddin was literally projected between the 2nd and the 4th. Like some even said he could be potentially a day 2 pick, which like we got him in the 6th round. Like that's crazy. And when we took Sherwood, because like he was the other guy that they wanted to play linebacker, who at first, I'm like, oh, they took a safety. I knew who he was. I'm like, he's a hard hitter. But then when Douglas is like, this guy's going to play linebacker, it was like brain all over the floor. Like he just won. Like I didn't even think of that. Like I was looking at linebackers. I was looking at safeties to play linebacker. Like that's a Joe Douglas thing. That's crazy.
Right. It's like these big athletic safeties and move them to linebacker. Like in theory, it makes sense, but I had the same reaction. It's like, safety really this early? But then you see like, oh, he was a captain. He played a ton of snaps on special teams. He can play outside linebacker. Then it starts to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. And that was exactly it. Like I hadn't dug deep into safeties because, we talked about most of a teacher. Like I have to pick and choose what to look at I try to look at deep around guys, like what the Jets want. So I didn't even look at safeties. I knew from watching Auburn that, Sherwood was a monster. Like this dude murdered people when he hit, but that's all I knew. Then like you look at it, you want a linebacker. He's, actually pretty fast for when you plug him into a linebacker. Like when you change a guy like that to a linebacker, he's actually excellent in coverage, sideline to sideline. Nasruddin too. Like Nasruddin was a beast. Like I couldn't believe, like when we took Sherwood, my immediate thought was like, oh, if we're taking a safety to play linebacker, I actually would have preferred like Hamza Nasruddin. Like that was like my immediate thought. Yeah. When I actually tweeted that too, because I was like, oh man, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like right when he took Sherwood and he's like, he's a linebacker. I was like, oh, I kind of would have preferred Nasruddin, but I don't mind it. Then he took Nasruddin, and I'm like, these two guys are going to kill it. Like, I think Sherwood and Nasruddin are going to come out in camp, be sideline to sideline, like blasting people at the line of scrimmage, excellent in coverage, playing tight ends, and they're going to be starters. Like, I'm excited about those two kids.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think you just mentioned it with the tight ends. Like the Jets have struggled finding someone to cover tight ends for a while, except for, Jamal Adams for a couple of years, but we know how that ended. But if the Jets can get even just one of them to hit, I think there's a chance that both can, play at this level. But even if one of them turns out to be just a quality starter, and you find that in either the 3rd or the 6th round with Nasruddin, that's a home run right there.
Man, I'm with you, man. And definitely if you had to pick one, I would say Nasruddin. Like that kid is chock full of potential. Like I don't get how he went that late. Like it's crazy. Like in 2 years alone at Florida State, they had like 192 tackles. Then in 2020, he was hurt. He only played 2 games, but he had 13. Like this dude, he gets to the ball. He's good in coverage. It's exciting. It's good stuff.
Athletic freak, just has a nose for the ball. I love it. I really do.
Yeah, man. But yeah, it's just, I love the picks. Like I think personally, I think Joe Douglas killed it. Like I love that last draft, especially that versatility we're talking about. Like another safety to play slot corner. But we were talking. You mentioned AVT before and Vera Tucker, but I was curious to you is where do you envision AVT along the offensive line if it were your choice, and who do you think is going to play that other guard spot?
Yeah, I think this guy with AVT, he's plug and play at left guard. I think, like I said, you put him next to Becton and you just forget about him. He's talented enough to play multiple spots on the line. And he played this past year in 2020, he played left tackle. In 2019, he played left guard. In 2018, he played right guard. So he can play all over the line and play it really well. But I think he's going to transition and be a guard and a left side guard. On the right side, if I had to pick one, probably.
Curious if you got my guy.
What'd you say?
Oh, I'm just curious if you got my guy. I'm just curious.
I'm gonna say Van Roten, but I think Cam Clark has a legitimate shot to do it. And I'm rooting for Cam Clark. I'd rather go that route because the younger guy that you just drafted and maybe a developmental piece where Van Roten's on the back nine of his career. But I think it's going to come down to one of those two guys. I think Alex Lewis is going to end up being a cap casualty.
I love it. Everything you just said. Absolutely love it. Everyone who follows me knows I'm a big offensive line guy. Like offensive line is my thing. You remember I was big into Creed for a while. Like everything you said was wonderful. Like I love it. Like that was great. Like exactly why you want AVT next to Becton. Perfect answer. You didn't mention McGovern. My interesting thing with McGovern is he did allow 6 sacks last year, and he's a center. And people say, it was the guard play, but that's 6 he allowed personally himself. So I'm hoping for better play. Like, I mean, if he isn't that good with Vera Tucker next to him, it's going to show. So at least then, next year we'll have a better idea. I'm still not sold on him, but at that right guard spot, I'm glad you mentioned Van Roten because I was, comparing, with him and Alex Lewis. Alex Lewis, I'm glad I don't get why he's still on this roster. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, this dude is a bull, but his technique is crap. Like, it's just garbage. Like, his footwork is bad. It's all bad. Like him and I made a joke that like him and Van Roten are like the total opposites. Like Van Roten has like excellent, flawless technique, but he's not the strongest dude. And Lewis is like a bull with crap technique. I want to find a way to just like put them together.
Hybrid.
Exactly. Like put them together and make a guy that's a beast and can block. But yeah, I like Van Roten over Lewis for that reason. Like I'll take better form and quickness over a guy that's just a bull every day that just doesn't have good form. I like Cameron Clark, man. Cameron Clark. People, you shouldn't sleep on this kid. Like he was a 4th round pick last year from Charlotte. The kid was awesome at what he did at Charlotte. He was a team captain in 18 and 19, first team All USA 2 years, the highest ranked run blocker in 2018, offensive MVP. He, like Becton, is a mauler. Like if you watch him, he puts people down. Like he finishes and he takes it. He's nasty. What I like, he's almost like a smaller Becton. And offensive line is one of those positions, it takes a little time to develop. That's why guys like, AVT that are NFL ready go immediately. They go top of the draft. Because if they're NFL ready, like guys like him, Penei Sewell, it's rare. But most offensive linemen, it's one of those positions, it still takes time to learn. Like if you throw a guy in there that's not ready, bad technique. I mean, edge rushers and defensive linemen in the NFL, whole different caliber than in college. Different caliber. Like if you don't believe that, meet Carl Lawson. Like he'll show you. Totally different character, like totally different. So I feel like, it takes a year or so to develop. I'm excited. Like I felt like this year, Clark has the potential to shine in camp because we have that void at guard. I mean, like you said, it's all potential at this point, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and I think it's reasonable to have that excitement level because I think there's a reason why Douglas picked him where he did. And I know he didn't dress for any games last year, but whether that's a Gase thing or whether it was just he's not ready yet kind of a thing, there's no way to know that now. But I think he has a legitimate chance. Like we said, Lewis at $5 million is probably coming off the cap, so it'll be between him and Van Roten. And I think you just give it to the best guy. And at that point, like if Van Roten's your first interior offensive lineman off the bench, then you're probably in pretty good shape with your line.
Yeah, and when we signed Van Roten, I at the time looked at it as you forget last year because last year he was kind of bad. But before we got him last year, he was, on the Panthers, he was average, like at worst average, sometimes pretty good for a couple years with the Panthers. And he's a hometown guy. Like he was a Jet fan. Like he's a hometown dude. So I kind of hoped, I thought like, him coming home will make him better than average. It didn't work that way. but I would still, yeah, I would keep him over Lewis every day.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure.
Yeah, man. So that's why I want to talk about the offensive line. But as you know, on defense, we've now transitioned to the 4-3, which I love. Like the second we transitioned to the 4-3, I immediately realized that I loved our pass rush options, but I was worried about our linebacker options. And we kind of talked about, you mentioned it before, so you don't have to get too much into it. You mentioned how you feel about Nasruddin, but in general, I felt linebacker was a really big problem, and in a way worse than corner because, God forbid, like worst case, Mosley gets hurt again. Or Gerard Davis, we took a flyer on. Like, we hope he's good. If he isn't good, I was like, we have no linebackers but Blake Cashman. And Cashman can't stay healthy. Right. So I feel like Joe did a good job in the draft addressing that, like linebacker wise, because that was my first thing when we transitioned to 4-3. But I'd love to, hear what you think on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, was for sure a need. I looked at linebacker and corners as the biggest need after they addressed edge so heavy in free agency. And we saw they didn't really address edge in the draft. They waited to undrafted free agency to take a couple swings there. And as far as linebacker goes, like it's just a bunch of question marks right now. Like you're hoping that CJ Mosley comes back and is what, like, I think we'd be happy if he's maybe 80% the player that he was when he got here. He hasn't played in 2 years. So what can we really expect from him? Blake Cashman's a sneeze away from landing on the IL again. He's just a walking injury. And as far as it goes with Davis, like you said, I think he's former first round pick, actually.
Yeah, and he was the 22nd overall. That kid was chock full of potential when he went.
Yeah, and maybe he was just being used wrong in Detroit, and maybe Salah could get more out of him, and Ulbrich can get more out of him, but that's definitely a question mark there too. So right now there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty at the position, but similar, we just talked about it with Cam Clark, but potential is there. If everything breaks right, it's just the chances of that happening is on the slimmer side.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm excited about the draft pick, specifically, Sherwood and Nasruddin. I like that. Gerard Davis, kind of like you said, he could be good, but he had 4 years. This is his 5th year now. So, but he took a flyer with him. Like, people don't realize it's like, as much as, I hate to bring up Pierre Desir because it made people upset, it was smart because, like, when Joe paid him, he was coming off an injury. And the year before that, he was one of the better corners in man coverage in the league. So he took a flyer on him, like the same thing he did with Davis. It's a flyer. If Davis isn't good, you cut and run like you did with Desir. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But I was curious what you thought about, because we were talking about the draft picks and we talked about the versatility of the linebacker, specifically at the safety position, because, again, Sherwood and Nasruddin were safeties, now playing linebacker. Another guy, you get a guy like Michael Carter. He was a safety. He's projected to play in the slot. You got a guy like Brandon Echols right now and Guidry back. How are you feeling about that slot position?
Yeah, I think it's going to go to either Michael Carter or Guidry. I think that's probably the best spot for both of those guys right now. It's hard to say. I think, anticipating where they get Carter, the 5th round, I think.
Carter was the 5th round, 154th pick.
Right. So I don't know. I think it's a tough ask for a 5th round rookie to come in and be your starting slot corner. So I say probably Guidry has a slight edge, but we'll see in training camp. And if there's, in preseason games or whatnot, maybe we see that, okay, Michael Carter's, ready for this. But if I had to bet right now, I guess I'm leaning towards Guidry as taking down the slot corner.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's a good option because I've been high on Guidry a while. Because the biggest argument I make to people is Brian Poole was one of the better slot corners in the league. Like when he played for us, he's one of the better ones in the NFL for 2 years in a row. When he got hurt, Guidry came in. I didn't notice the difference. Like they didn't miss a beat. Like that kid stepped in and played at an elite level. And PFF showed it because in coverage, I think Poole had like a 77 point something last year. Guidry had a 73 point something. And he was an undrafted guy. So right. The potential's there. Carter's like 5th round pick, the potential is there. Because for example, in the later rounds, you took a guy like Jason Pinnock. I think Pinnock what's exciting, I think Pinnock and Hall, it's amazing. Douglas gets these guys in the later rounds. Hall was a 5th round pick. Pinnock was, I think, a 6th round pick, I believe, or 5th round. 2 of them I see on the outside this year. Pinnock, puts people on an island. And it's slot. You meant Carter, Guidry. We finally got options.
Yeah, that's right. It's younger options too. It's not like these stopgap veterans who are, well past their prime. And I'm a huge, you mentioned Bryce Hall. I'm a huge Bryce Hall fan. I think he could be a really good starting outside corner. I think on the other side, there's a little bit of a question mark there. And we'll see. Maybe they decide to bring in a veteran. Like I know Richard Sherman gets brought up all the time because of the Robert Saleh connection. So maybe they bring in a vet like that. But at least like I feel like we can live with the secondary, specifically the corners, being on the young and inexperienced side because of how good the front four could be on this team.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, I'm excited about that front four. Like I was saying, when we switched to the 4-3, like I didn't even think of linebacker because I just started thinking about our rushers and how they work in a 4-3, and I just started salivating. Like I didn't even think about linebacker for a couple of minutes, and I was like, wait, crap, we don't have any linebackers to play in the 4-3. Oh no. But on the line, man, you talking we got Carl Lawson, that dude. I showed freaking 32 QB hits last year. That kid hit a quarterback 2 times a game. Like amazing, that kid. Quinnen Williams is going to be healthy. Rankins has the potential to be like him. You got Franklin Myers, Foley Fatukasi. One guy that's slept on, though, I think, is Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff, the undrafted guy from last year. In this 4-3 system, he reminds me of like a Carl Lawson, like a tough guy that, can line up on the edge, be physical, but also has a pass rush tree. I'm excited about. Like, I think people, feel like Franklin Myers might be the guy there. I say don't sleep on Huff, man. Huff and Lawson could be those 2 guys that eat on the edge.
Yeah, I think, and Huff is definitely like faster than John Franklin Myers. I don't know how he's going to be going to the outside. But I'm not opposed to giving Huff some reps. I think he looks pretty good in the limited sample we saw from him last year.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. Like I was big on him. Like I liked him back when he played for Memphis. Like I don't get how this kid wasn't drafted. Like it didn't make sense to me. Like he was awesome at Memphis, played well in his senior year. I was like, he's going to go somewhere in the 5th and 7th round, and we need to get him. Somehow we got him undrafted. But there's so much talent on that line. Like you said, there's so many guys. Like you could literally list out like 7, 8 guys. And we did the same. That was one of the other questions I was going to ask you, getting to that. Wide receivers, same thing. I feel like all the positions, like going back to March, when beginning of March, before free agency started, we're like, okay, we need this, we need that. I feel like every position we could have thought of, Joe Douglas addressed. Like whether it was a little bit or a lot, he literally addressed everything. Like, I don't know how you feel on that, but I thought about it and I was like, he literally got us everything. Like, some were better than others, but it feels like he got like a little bit of everything between free agency and the draft.
Yeah, I think so. There's not really too many positions where I'm like, oh, I wish he would have did more. I think, like we said, he attacked edge and free agency, corners later in the draft, linebacker later in the draft. He brought in Corey Davis. He also spent the 34th pick on Elijah Moore. He got the best guard in the class. I think there's a lot to really like. And sure, maybe he missed out on the Joe Thuney's and of the world in free agency. And I get it. I get the frustration, but he got a huge contract from, the back-to-back AFC champions. Like he's not going to take that money to come to the Jets. Like it makes so much sense for him to go there. So I understand why he wasn't able to sign a Joe Thuney. It would have been great if he came in, no doubt. But moving up and getting Elijah Vera Tucker, I think is an okay consolation prize.
It's a hell of a consolation prize. I'll take that consolation prize every day. Like, man. But that you pointed it. You nailed it on the head. And I made a joke about that when free agency happened. Like, free agency started, and Jet fans were, like, okay, what's going on? Like, the Jets haven't done anything yet. We're waiting. We're watching other teams sign people. Then they find out, Thuney's probably not going to happen, and everyone freaked out. But like you said, the argument made sense. Like, if you're Joe Thuney and you have multiple teams that are making you offers, and I don't want to crap on my team too much, but if I'm comparing my team to the Kansas City Chiefs, it's not a fair comparison. No. So he's going to go to Patrick Mahomes. That's a better opportunity if the money's the same. So so many people were like, oh, Joe Douglas missed it there. I feel like that was an important message. Like it showed us that that's where we want to be. You know what I mean? Like people are like feeling like we can't get Thuney, but that should be the goal. Like we should want to be a team that when an all-star player has offers on the table, he chooses us. Like that should be the goal.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the Jets aren't quite there yet, but
we're not there yet.
A couple years down the line, some more of these draft picks hit, they start winning some games. Zach Wilson looks like the real deal. Then it's a different story.
Exactly. And that's, people forget that, like it's baby steps. Like, I was, shout out to all my guys, we do on I do a bunch of podcasts with some people, they were all saying stuff like, some are expecting 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins. I look at it as, as long as things look good and we look like we're progressing towards something, as long as it's not like a train wreck and a blow up in my face. I'm not going to be, because it's only Joe Douglas's second draft. They kind of screw. I love that situation. Like, could you imagine, like, just for a sec, just funny, I always joke about this, being Joe Douglas in June, like on that interview, like, okay, so we had the draft and we had free agency. So the team's made, but do you want the job?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, wait, what?
That made no sense. Well, I mean, I was glad that we were able to get rid of McCagney.
Of course, yeah.
But the timing was just so bizarre on that. You're right.
I just can't even imagine like that conversation. Like, well, yeah, you can't have this, you can't have that, but he made it work, and that's like the whole thing. Like, people crap. Like, I love Joe Douglas. Like, I'll go to bat. I've been saying since his first draft, because like I do a lot of draft eval. I look at a lot of deeper guys. I've done it since I was younger, but I just didn't look into it as much. Like, I always, when the Jets pick was up, I always had, somebody on my mind, like at least 4 or 5 guys that I wanted in that position. And every GM, freaking Itzik, McCagney, they didn't know it. They couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't draft. Then Joe has his first draft, and I'm like, next day, I'm like, he killed it. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? They haven't played yet. I'm like, trust me, after all these years, he killed it.
You can tell. Yeah, you can
you can tell. Yeah.
There's a big difference from, drafting, I don't know, pick one, Darren Lee in the first rounds, and then,
Mike Nugent at 59 overall.
Yeah, there's so many, and you're just like, I don't know about that. And then 3 years from now, they're out of the league, where like the aggressive, we've talked about it a bunch already, but the aggressive play to go up and get a guy who he feels could be a Pro Bowler or all pro guard, or moving back and still getting Denzel Mims. Like, there's just been so much more signs of competency in these first 2 drafts. I'm with you.
Yeah, and it's been everything. Like, even the first free agency, like, people were like, oh, he didn't spend a lot of money. Well, he came into a team where he didn't get to draft our free agency, and Mac put us in bankruptcy hell. Like, McCagney literally spent $250 million in 1 year. Like, on guys that they didn't deserve it. Like, freaking Henry Anderson. It's like, okay, the kid had 7 sacks. He's never done anything before that. He deserves $25 million. Like, that makes sense. Guys like Darryl Roberts getting big contracts.
Oh my God, unbelievable.
So yes, people are like crapping on him. I'm like, it makes sense. Like, he's bringing in guys like Desir, guys that have potential on cheap deals. And what did he do? He took a team that went from one of the most bankrupt teams to the 3rd most money. And like, I feel like people didn't, appreciate that enough. Like, to realize that he took a team that was that screwed because of the prior GM. And in just 2 years, because of that smart spending, this year we were able to spend. We have some of the most money.
Right. And I think he's also done a really good job of using the few assets they do have and getting good value for them. Like, I love the Leonard Williams trade, Jamal Adams trade, and Sam Darnold trade. I think he got phenomenal value on each one of those 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's funny. I've talked about that on my other podcast as well, because I'm a Douglas guy. I've been for a while. It's like everything he does, I love. It's amazing. It's like I want to meet him and be like, are we brothers? Like, it matches up, like, philosophy, like with the focus on the offensive line and football being one of the trenches, with the defensive line and edge too. But you mentioned it with the trades. Like, I look at it, and if you look at the metrics, it's almost like Joe Douglas makes the trade and then somehow gets a little bit more. It's like every trade he makes, he always comes out on top. Like, he always gets a little bit more. Like, he's the kind of guy right before he gets to the phone, he's like, wait, okay, throw in a 4th.
Yeah, and the team, yeah,
man. I'm a huge fan. Like, I love the guy.
Yeah, I love it. First 2 years, good for me, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned that slot cornerback situation. We mentioned the outside corner situation. I think we're looking pretty good, if you want to, look at some of the different positions on this team. You mentioned, being a little weak at that second corner. I feel like I didn't know. And again, like, Douglas being so much more brilliant than me, I'd heard of Jason Pinnock, but I hadn't dug in deep. Like, people watch my drafts. Like, I didn't get big on him. Like I mentioned, I saw him once and I liked what I saw, but I didn't dig deep. When I started to dig deep when we drafted him, I was like, holy cow. Like, Joe Douglas got a guy. Like, you could check it out. I found stats. He compares to like J.C. Horn and Derek Stingley Jr. Like, the numbers match up. Like, Horn last year allowed a 33% completion rating against. And people are like, oh, that's great. He was the 8th overall pick. Well, Pinnock had the highest of anybody. He had 3% less than that. And he also beats Derek Stingley in a category too. I think it's the lowest completion percentage for outside corners since 2019. It's crazy. Like, I look at these numbers, and people who watch Pitt, like, I have friends who are Pitt fans, like, anyone who watches Pitt, they'll tell you their outside corners, they're on an island. Like they have no help. Like that's how it works there. And it's just a coincidence. That's where Darrell Rivas came from. Because that's how it is. Pick guys. If you're an outside corner, you have no help. Either sink or swim. And it seems like this dude has swum with like the best of them. So like I don't want to get too hyped, but I'm like, man, I think about him on the outside, the physicality he brings, Hall on the other side, like you mentioned. We got those slot options we talked about. I don't want to get too excited, but I think about it. We always say on paper, like that's how it works with the Jets. Yeah. Where it's like, well, on paper they look great. I don't know how they went 2-14.
Yeah, with him, I think the biggest thing that I've heard is he sometimes gets into trouble getting beat deep. So, but that could make sense because, like you said, if he's playing on an island a lot, like you're going to be more susceptible to that if it's just single coverage on the outside, unless you are Darrell Rivas and there's only one of him. So, like optics wise, it might be easier to go through and cherry pick some of those. But I think the athleticism is going to help him going into the next level, and why he has a shot at maybe getting a role here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And yeah, he took a couple of corners. You got Echols as well. That's an interesting pick. You got him in the slot, Carter. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting options there. You talked about the offensive line. Wide receiver, you mentioned Corey Davis and Mims. Like, I don't know how you feel, but Mims is just totally slept on. Like, there's people on Twitter saying that Mims can't be a wide receiver one. And I'm like, how do you come to that conclusion? Like, how do you come to that conclusion after one season of play when like rookies tend to get hurt more often than not? And guys like Allen Robinson, Kenny Galladay, that's how they start. Like most guys have seasons like that. And the dude hurt his hamstrings. Like he was supposed to be a first round pick. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I still think Mims could be that guy.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Last year I thought he was going to be someone who would go in like the mid-20s in the draft, and I was stunned that he was there at 48, and then stunned again when they traded back and they were able to nab him in the second round when they did. I think he has the potential to be a number one receiver, and they have a really good, 4 or 5, maybe 6 deep receivers now after the draft, which is something that we're not used to here, but. For whatever reason, it just seemed like Mims and Sam Darnold couldn't get on the same page a lot. And I think in this offense, he's going to be given some more opportunities, especially in the red zone. Like that's where I see him thriving as a big red zone target who can go up and get those contested catches and stuff like that. I think that's going to be a rookie quarterback's best friend.
Of course, man. I mean, that's a security blanket is always the best thing for a rookie. And like people talk about that, just while we're on the topic of the wide receiver, having those weapons. Like the second we took Elijah Moore, who I'm hyped for, like I love the pick, but everyone's like, we got to get rid of Jamison Crowder. And I'm like, this again. Like I thought we were past this. Like what happened? Like people wanted to get rid of him for Curtis Samuel, and that still didn't make sense to me because Samuel had one good year of play. Crowder's going to be consistently one of the best slot guys, period. And like people are talking about it now, like they're saying, we should cut Crowder because he's got all this guaranteed money. But just he's making the money and it's not guaranteed. Like if the player's worth it and you don't need the money, I don't know how you feel on it, but I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think the only way I'd move on from him is if you said like, okay, I want to take that $10 million and put it towards a different position. And maybe you could, okay, maybe you sell me on it. But if it's just 10 million to free up 10 million, then I don't see why. Like make life as easy for your young quarterback as possible. And if like, I think we found out on day 2, that he was going to stay. Like my initial gut thought was, oh, maybe they trade him for a pick in this draft to get back up into the 3rd round or something with a package, but that never really came to fruition. So then after day 2 was over, I came to the conclusion that I think he's going to stick for this year. And then after that, who knows, but why not help your young quarterback?
I'm with you, man. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, like you want as many weapons as you can have, and Moore should be legit. Like, I'm excited about Moore. Like, I've been showing nothing but stats about Moore. Like, that kid, best slot receiver in college football last 2 years, put up multiple 200-yard games, most in Ole Miss history. Kid's never dropped the ball in the red zone. Like, the stats just go on and on. Like, this kid was amazing. Like, best slot wide receiver in the draft. But it doesn't always translate to the NFL. And people get hurt. We saw it last year with Mims. Like, Mims hurt both his hamstrings. Like, that happens. The NFL is a different animal. So he's gotten hurt a couple of times, but he's healthy more often than not. And he's consistently been one of the best slot guys. And it comes down to that value. Like, if he's worth that money and you don't need it. Like, I could be wrong, but I think we still got like 40-something million, maybe even more ish. Like we still got money. So if we needed money, I could totally get it. But like you said, get the rookie the options, give him the weapons available. And that's why, interesting transition. We talk about value, getting into the Marcus May situation. Like, because that's a value situation. I think too many people are thinking it's about the money. I could be wrong, but my take on it is I don't think it is, because Douglas has shown, like, as he's done with guys like Lawson, he'll pay a guy that's worth it. And everyone knows May's worth it. I mean, May was the defensive player on our best team, player on our team last year. It was amazing. One of the best safeties in the league. I mean, I think it's not money as much as it may be time, because the dude's going to be 28 years old soon, potentially 29 the year after that, if he plays out this year. So I think maybe it might be something like, he wants 4 years and too much guaranteed, potentially.
Yeah, that would make sense, because as you said, he was an older prospect coming out, and he's been really good. Like, I think the Jets should pay him, but maybe it's like you said, Mays can't. Maybe they want 4 years, and Joe Douglas is like, I really only want to go 3. I don't want to get into paying a guy in the secondary into their early 30s. But I think it would be wise for the Jets to get something done with him. He's been a good soldier through some really bad years too. And, it's not going to hamstring you like it would if you had to sign Jamal Adams to $20 million. Because like $20 million a year kind of contract. Because what do you think May's going to get? Maybe 12, 13 at the most, something like that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I did a whole thing, on May yesterday, on yesterday's Take Flight Spin Fire podcast. I showed how, the highest paid safety in the NFL is Budda Baker, and Budda doesn't even make $15 million. Like, safety is not a premium position anymore. So you're not going to pay that guy big money. I feel like the only thing we know definitively is like, okay, well, he took the tag, so obviously he wants more than about 10.6 million. Like, we know that. Like, that's the one thing we know definitively. Like, he wants to make more than that, or he wouldn't have taken the tag. But they have till July 15th to make it happen. You pay the dude. Like, I mean, he's a great player. He plays at that level. I would, if you front load that contract, maybe, like, make it something like, pay him a little more. Like, give him like 2 years, 28 million, and maybe like 20 of it guaranteed. Like, it sounds like a lot, but you think about being able to pay people in the future, it doesn't screw your cap over, and he's worth the money.
Yeah, that's true. And then it kind of holds you over in the present, and you could help, develop some of those guys like Ashton Davis could develop and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't hate that either. Going on the short term, that could work.
Yeah, man. So bringing up some of the comments, like always, I appreciate you guys here. Thank you for bringing the comments. Thank you for pointing those things out. Matthias had one. Matthias brought up Yabo and said he thinks Yabo is going to compete for sure. Tempo to Ole Miss, took a big step. Now we might take it off. I think so, man. I mean, if you want to lead this one off, but I think so.
Yeah, I know on draft day, Green Bean was all over Kenny Yeboah. He thought he was going to go in like the 5th round, and he was still sitting there with their 6th round picks. And then as an undrafted free agent, he comes in. I think he has a legit shot. Tight end's wide open to me. I'm still a Chris Herndon guy. I think he has a chance to be solid after the Adam Gase era. We see players tend to thrive once he leaves, and I think he's a good candidate for that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I liked it a lot. In fact, when we got our undrafted guys, that's one thing, people like, I don't like this guy. Like, it's an undrafted guy. Like, the chance of making the team is almost nothing. Like, you may not be thrilled, but I don't get people that like, oh, I hate that undrafted guy. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's a developmental guy. You hope it works out. But I have 2 that I really like, and one was apparently I've been saying it wrong. It's Yeboah.
Yeah,
because I've been saying Yebo. I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Yeah, Kenny Yeboah.
Yeboah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Let's say it right from here on out. Excuse me. So Kenny Yeboah, dude, he was legit, and we need receiving options. Because you mentioned, Chris Herndon could be a good option. We don't know 100%. He showed up last year. Like, at the end of last season, he had catch percentages of 78%, 100% in 2 games. So the potential's there, but It's still, like you mentioned, like a question mark. So the other guys, like, we have blocking tight ends, which I like. Especially when, you have a porous offensive line like last year. You got a guy like Wesco, a guy like Croft, they can block. But when it comes to receiving options, it's just Herndon. Like, that's it. So I really like bringing him on, especially because he was the 2nd best receiver on Ole Miss next to Elijah Moore. Like, the dude's proven he could play.
Right. Yeah. It's that you get the 1-2 punch from that team. So I'm not opposed to it. I think, as you said, good value as an undrafted free agent. Why not?
Yeah, man. The other undrafted guy, I don't know if you have a favorite guy. We can talk about that for a sec. I really like Hamilcar Rashed Jr., another edge rusher. I mean, I like Huff more. Don't get me wrong. I love Huff's potential. But Rashed, he's a 1 year wonder at Oregon State. But that 1 year is like insane. In that 1 year, he had 14 sacks and 22 TFLs. So he's a little small. I ain't saying that because I don't like size. Like last year, Frankie Louvu, I think he could still dominate in the 4.3, and he's only 236. So I don't get too wrapped up in size, but he is technically a little small for a 4.3 edge guy, but it could be an interesting situation. I don't know who you like in the undrafted guys.
I would Aboa's up there for me. Kind of a cop-out answer, but I might go with the kicker, Nugar, just because I feel like they've been lacking at that position for such a long time, and I'm hoping that this swing works out. And I mean, it can't get much worse than Sam Ficken, so I hope he's able to beat him out in camp.
Yeah, bro, I couldn't believe they kept him. Like that did like I didn't get that. Like of all the guys to keep, like wouldn't have been Fickett. Like that didn't make sense to me, like at all. But that's a good pick, because like I don't know if you saw that video on Twitter. He hit like a 72-yard kick on like a practice field.
Right.
Granted, in college, people said that he's 0 for 2 on 50 plus, but it's only 2 tries.
Right.
It's only 2. So the potential's there. The kid's got a strong leg. And you mentioned it. We haven't had a kicker in a while. Like the last time we had a legit like guy that we can rely on, like that was Nick Folk. Like that was a decade ago. And we've seen it firsthand with guys like freaking Vedvik and oh man, like I don't even want to keep going through the list. Like Bertollet, like just horrible, horrible kicking woes and losing games because of having a bad freaking kicker, man. So yes, I'm hoping. I hope he's got a strong leg. The potential's there.
Yeah, that's what I think. I know it's not like a sexy position, but that might be the most important undrafted free agent just because of how bad they've been ever since Jason Myers left.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's like Jimmy's here, shout out to appreciate Jets by Jimmy. Appreciate you here, my man. Jimmy is also like me. He was really big on Jose Borregales. And Borregales did go undrafted, but he decided to go to the Buccaneers, which is the same thing like you mentioned with Thuney. Like, I don't like it, but I get it. Like, I'm not thrilled, but I understand. Like, yeah. I get why you made that decision.
Of course. Yeah, like defending Super Bowl champion Tom Brady. Yeah, I get it. We get it.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled, but I get it. So, yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Matthias points out we need 2 good tight ends. It's an interesting situation because, like we were just talking about, I feel like we got decent blocking options in Wesco and Croft. Both have definitely, a lot of potential there because you need blocking guys. And receiving option, Yabo could definitely, make it happen. Herndon could definitely, step it up.
Yeah, I think so. Like in this system, I feel like in the Shanahan style, it would make sense to have 2 good tight ends. And honestly, last year, I thought the Jets were going to have that with Griffin and Herndon, but for whatever reason, they never put both of them on the field. And I think Griffin at this point is just too banged up. I don't think he's ever going to be healthy enough to play at the level which he did in 2019, filling in for Herndon. But, I think it's always good for a young quarterback to have, those bigger guys you can rely on. Like for Mark Sanchez, it was Dustin Keller. And able to have like 2 tight ends that you can trust in the receiving game. I'm not opposed to that at all.
Yeah, man, that's a throwback. And that was when he was the best. Like people forget, like Sanchez was the best when he had Keller, when he had that check down option. Like Eli Manning was the best when he had a great tight end option. Shockey was there for a while. Like that's important to have that option. So
yeah, nice blanket for sure.
Without a doubt, man. So yes, we got some great questions here. Appreciate all you guys. Appreciate Ciro. Shout out. Appreciate John. Appreciate you, Matthias. Jimmy, we pointed out. Noah pointed out, Douglas drafted almost as well as he did with the mock drafts. No Creed Humphrey, but it was good. It was great, man. I love it. I think it was a great draft. Like, I think and it was surprising. Like, that was the thing, like we pointed out. Like, you think about it, like, it wasn't the guy I initially wanted, but then you think about it and you're like, okay, Douglas was right. Like he's got this.
Yeah, we saw the plan come into place. Like it made sense. They took a bunch of offensive guys early, and then it was athletic swings on the defensive side. And late day 2 or day 3, it made sense.
Yeah, no, it really does. So we talk about some of the different positions. Just quick, we can maybe talk about the running back position quickly because that's an interesting position. Too many people are wanting like that bell horse guy, but that's not a thing anymore. Like that was a thing when we were kids. Like, I mean, shit, like the days of Curtis Martin, the days of Jerome Bettis. Like nowadays, it's like Ezekiel Elliott and that's it. Like may Saquon Barkley if he can stay healthy. Like it's not a thing anymore. And especially in the solid system. We saw it with guys like Moser. He makes these no-name guys great. Like committees work well, especially when they complement each other. And I freaking loved our committee before we took Michael Carter. I thought it was underappreciated. And Michael Carter is just an awesome pick. Like when I watch this kid, like one thing I remember about him that stuck out the most is his patience. Like that's something that's underrated in running backs nowadays. Like he reminds me of, I don't want to say Bell because no one wants to talk about him. So let's say LaDainian Tomlinson could be another throwback example to not talk about him.
I like that.
That ability to, be patient. I've seen that in the backfield. He totally waits, makes cuts, finds the open hole, and then hits it hard. I think that dude could be, one of the starters at some point.
I definitely think so. I think he's the most talented back on this roster already. And I know he hasn't taken a snap yet, but he's perfect for the system that they're going to run. If Tevin Coleman's healthy, I think he's great for the system also. He still has speed. I love Ty Johnson. I think he was the best running back on the team last year. I'm not really that big on the Michael Pirine. I don't think he's that much of a fit in this system specifically. But if you have Carter, Coleman, Johnson, that's a pretty nice three right there.
Yeah, like before, bro. You're speaking my language. My thing was I don't want to crap on him too much, but Perine was never my guy. Like when Joe had that first draft, like when I said he killed it, I've been consistently saying he killed it except for 2 picks. Like the 2 picks I wasn't a fan of Perine and Zuniga. I just didn't like those 2 picks. Everything else I love, like across the board. But with Perine, like I look at him and he's not the strongest guy. He's not going to bull through somebody. He's not that big. Okay, so you expect him to be fast, but he's not. Like Ty Johnson is really fast and really quick. Like Josh Adams is a bull and he's a beast. Pirine is like stuck in the middle. Like he's neither. And that's why like I was never like, I don't hate the kid, but I don't see him being any more than a decent compliment at best.
Yeah, you're right. The only thing like his most redeeming quality, I think, is in pass protection, actually. And like you said, like he's not really that quick. He's okay out of the backfield catching. He's not going to run you over either. So what does he really do? His best trait is probably as a pass protector. So maybe he gets on the field a little bit on third downs, but I don't see how he's anything more than like a running back 3.
Yeah, but I got to say, man, like I've had him out like far and out for a long time, especially when we got Carter and Coleman. You kind of convinced me a little bit, like right there. Like that was a good point you made with the pass protector because Johnson proved he can't pass protect for shit. Mm-hmm. And Josh Adams is okay. I haven't really seen Tevin Coleman pass protect, but maybe that's definitely something. I definitely didn't think about that. You gave me something to think about.
Yeah, so maybe that's his redeeming quality. Like because as a runner, I'm with you. I think there's 3 guys that are definitely more talented, and even 4 with Adams. But maybe that's what gets him to stick on this roster is as a pass protector.
Yeah, man, I'm 100% with you, and it's exciting to see the different directions they go in potentially. But yeah, it's a deep committee. There's 5 guys right now, so probably one of them is at least going to be the odd man out, maybe even 2. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that like the running back situation and the slot corner situation, because like the guys I mentioned before, like Guidry, Carter, Eccles, I think those could be the most exciting camp battles to watch of people with a lot of potential duking it out to see who's going to be the 1, 2, 3 guy.
Oh, no doubt. 100%. Because there's still a lot of like starting jobs up for grabs. Like we know that each position, I feel like there's a lot of guys that it could be, but we don't know the definite starter at running back or at the cornerback room and stuff like that, or who's going to get the starting will linebacker job, or is this tight end position going to be given to Chris Herndon? So there's so many question marks that are going to be, really exciting talking points during the offseason here, I think.
Definitely. And I see the guys in the chat, they're talking about, blocking options and tight end and how important that is. Yeah, we talked about it before, man. That offensive line was porous last year. Like it was not good. And we haven't had good offensive line play in a while. And you mentioned it with Joe Douglas, taking guys high, offensive guys. It's like you don't need a rocket scientist to figure this out. Like the positions we suck the most at are the positions that haven't been addressed in the top of this draft. Like before Douglas took Mekhi Becton, we hadn't taken an offensive lineman since 2006. And yeah, lo and behold, that was when we got Ferguson and Mangle. And they lit it up for a decade. So, and then wide receiver, you mentioned we swung and missed on so many guys. You think high, remember Stephen Hill, freaking Devin Smith. Yep. Like they wouldn't go wide receiver, and when they did, they missed. But I could be wrong, but it feels like Douglas hit with Denzel Mims.
Yeah, I really think so. I was a huge Mims fan coming out. My whole thing was I was like trying to convince myself, like, is there a way for the Jets to trade back up into the first round to get a guy like Mims? I thought he'd be perfect for Sam Darnold. And then he's sitting there at 48. And I remember I was just like, oh my God, like I'm so excited. My guy is here. Douglas trades back. I was pissed. And then he was still somehow there when they traded back and they picked him. I think that pick was the most exciting one. Like I love the Mekhi Becton pick because that left tackle was such a huge need. But like Mims was my guy. So I was so happy when they pulled that off in the second round.
Now I'm with you, man, and that was funny. It was really funny to watch Jed's Twitter because you weren't the only one, man. At that pick, right when he traded back, it was like consensusly everyone was like, he missed out on Mims. Like Mims was there. What is this guy thinking? But then he still got him, and it was like immediately all of a sudden a complete 180 where it's like we got Mims. Right. Like oh my God, and I feel like because people were so excited about that, we didn't realize the most important factor, and the fact is that by trading back and still getting Mims, he showed us that not only does he, have value and understand value, he gets what other teams are going to do. Like he totally gets like, okay, these guys weren't going to take Mims. Like he gets what other teams are going to do. And that's totally an underappreciated quality.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he knows or has a pretty good idea of how the draft board is going to fall. So that's definitely for sure one of his redeeming qualities.
Yeah, man, we got some guys. We got Green Bean in here. Yeah, man. Green Bean's like, look at those two. Yeah. We're up here, my man. We're doing it.
Love it.
I'd love to have you on, bro. You should definitely come on sometime. I'd love to have you, man. We'll talk about them Jets. I think you could have 3 people on this thing, right?
I'm sure you could.
I think so. I have to figure it out. I don't know about you, Green Bean. I'm figuring it out as I go.
Love it.
But yeah, man, that was all the stuff I wanted to talk about. It was a lot of fun having you on. It was really exciting to get into it. Exciting to talk about those Jets. I appreciate you. Definitely appreciate you coming on. And as you guys know, I mean, you obviously know. I mean, what Matt does on YouTube. It's amazing. He's got a great channel there. Always giving you guys updates on the Jets. Stats, facts, things going on. I imagine probably every single one of you is already checking them out. But if not, please do.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Harrison, for having me on. It was a blast talking Jets with you guys, and love to do it again.
Yeah, man. So as you know, I'm here. We got Matt again, and thank you guys for tuning in. Like always, thank you guys for being here for the Take Flight Spit and Fire podcast. As always, there's a special guest like we always do. We do it sometimes during the week, but we're here on Mondays. So check us out Monday nights at 7 p.m. live. I'll be here, always talking to you about them Jets, bringing on some guests. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. And yeah, thank you guys again for being here on your Tuesday afternoon. Take care, and hopefully them Jets kick some ass pretty damn soon.